Good evening. Hey, Monique. Good evening.
Good evening, Mary Margaret.
And good evening to folks who are here. Welcome, everyone. Happy to have you here. We're pleased to welcome you back to one of our community conversations by the UU Urban Ministry. And I'm Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, proud and delighted to be the executive director of the Urban Ministry. The Urban Ministry is an organization whose mission is to work across race and place to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. We operate a shelter for survivors of domestic violence, run a workforce development program for trauma survivors, offer after school and summer programming for Boston high school students. And we also live into our mission through the arts and humanities and lectures and gatherings like this evening. So welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Mary Margaret. My name is Monique Marshall-Beal. I'm the Director of Special Projects here at the Urban Ministry. I have the honor of working every day with Mary Margaret and some amazing people who care a lot about this community. Tonight's community conversation has become part of the Urban Ministry fabric, and the community conversations highlight the history, art, and experiences of Black and Indigenous people of color. These conversations have provided an opportunity to raise awareness around some of the issues that plague the residents of color in Boston neighborhoods. These conversations have also provided information on how to support organizations and the work that they're doing to help people of color. It is our hope that these conversations continue in the coming year, both virtually and in person. So please stay connected with us to find out about upcoming conversations. And thank you again for joining us in this engaging conversation about the new mission and vision of the Urban Ministry.
Thank you. Thank you, Monique. One important aspect of the Urban Ministry is that we have nearly 50 member congregations, Unitarian Universalist congregation around Greater Boston. And each of our webinars, our community conversation webinars, has been sponsored by one of them. Tonight, I am so proud that our webinar is sponsored by 3 of our member congregations: First Parish in Milton, First Parish in Lexington, and Fallen Congregation, also in Lexington. We are so grateful and thank them for really supporting our work by sponsoring these webinars. Our Commitment Minute video is from Milton, and it features my very dear colleague, the Reverend Lisa Ward. And so we're going to hear from them now.
Greetings. What a joy and privilege it is to co-sponsor this evening's community conversation, celebrating, activating, and invigorating the UU Urban Ministry's mission and vision statements. These bold aspirations need deep and wide commitment, mindfulness, and undaunted endurance. These are qualities the UU Urban Ministry continues to model and inspire, honoring the wisdom of the Roxbury community to shape an effort that can advance racial, economic, and social justice. I'm Reverend Lisa Ward, serving First Parish in Milton. First Parish in Milton has been a part of the Urban Ministry's wider community for many years and has benefited greatly in service opportunities throughout those years. We are proud to be in solidarity in our local advocacy of social, economic, environmental, and racial justice. We too find the wisdom for our work in the place where we dwell. First Parish in Milton sends gratitude to the UU Urban Ministry for your vital work for justice in the world. Many blessings as you live into your mission. Keep on keeping on. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Lisa Ward, and First Parish in Milton, Fallen, and First Parish Lexington.
Thank you, Mary Margaret. So over the last year and a half, which seems so far away and long ago, the urban ministry, in addition to these community conversations, started to promote small business owners of color. And what we did was start by creating community conversations, showcasing incredible food, products, and services around the neighborhoods of Boston. These commercials have allowed business owners to market their business during a very challenging time in our country. So as you think about places to eat and shop, especially now that the weather is getting warmer, please remember these businesses that we highlight during our conversation. And please watch tonight's community conversation by Fresh Food Generation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cassandra Campbell. I am the co-founder of Fresh Food Generation. We are a farm-to-plate food truck, catering business, and restaurant. The majority of folks who work with us live within walking distance of the neighborhood, and we think it's really important to grow within. We opened up about 8 years ago with a food truck in the Dudley Square neighborhood. It really started with a mission of increasing access to healthy, affordable, cooked foods in my own neighborhood. I was born and raised in Roxbury, and I wanted to see healthier options that were delicious and good for you. Please stop by the restaurant. We have outdoor seating, and we have a team that loves to put love into the food.
Awesome. And I can vouch for Fresh Food Generation. They've had their food truck here at some of our events, and just wonderful people, wonderful mission. Please write them down if you're going to cater from someplace. Great place to order your catering from. It's just a wonderful organization. So now we're going to get into our main event this evening. So Monique and I, each year that we've done this, we've planned out what we should highlight. And this is the first time we actually decided to highlight our organization.
Yes.
Because there's so much that's been happening, and we have a new mission and vision statement, very exciting time. And this was an opportunity for us to say, let's dig into the work that we're doing here at the Urban Ministry. So this evening, we are so proud to welcome two people who have helped to lead us to this point with our new mission and vision. They're our current board chair and just past vice chair. And I'm going to introduce our wonderful board chair, Karla Baehr, who's been a courageous and a strong leader in this process. And I want to tell you a little bit about Karla. Karla currently co-leads the state's new superintendent induction program and consults to school districts and others on resource reallocation, educator development, labor management relations, and other challenges. Prior to her current work, Karla served as deputy commissioner at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Earlier, she co-led the Urban Superintendents Network and served also as superintendent of schools in Lowell for 8 years and Wellesley for 9. She also served on the faculty at Lesley University. She's an active member of the First Parish in Brookline.
Thank you. I have the honor of introducing David Harris. David recently retired as managing director of the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice and is a lecturer at Harvard Law School. David has extensive experience in many facets of civil rights issues. And prior to his position at the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute, he served as founding executive director of the Fair Housing Center of Greater Boston. David is the former president of the board of directors of the Massachusetts Foundation for the Humanities and longtime chair of the Medford Human Rights Commission. He currently chairs the Massachusetts Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. He has served for many years on the board of Urban Ministry, and we are very lucky to have him as part of this organization. Please join me in welcoming David and Karla.
Welcome, David and Karla. Hello.
Welcome.
Great to see you.
Good to see you both.
Greetings.
Thank you. Thank you both for joining us. And before we get started and jump right into our new mission and vision statement conversation, can you help us to get to know each of you a little bit better? So Mary Margaret and I did the formal introductions of both of you. Can you share a little bit about yourselves and highlight kind of what drew you to join the board of the Urban Ministry? Karla, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I'm an avid Boston Celtics fan, and which didn't move me to join the board, but I just wanted to say that I'm very relieved that they turned their season around. My engagement with the board, I think part of it, to be in all honesty, is that I have worked for boards for my whole career, and the opportunity to sit on a board and then chair a board just seemed like a fun opportunity to do something, be the board member and work with the executive director rather than being the executive director working with the board. So it was a sort of a selfish thing. You know, I was active in, I am active in the First Parish in Brookline, and the opportunity to connect with the urban ministry, the opportunity to as a board member, to really look at what can happen when you've got 46 congregations in suburban Boston and some in Boston, what you can do when you can harness the power and the gifts of the organization in collaboration with the community that urban ministry is located in. I just thought there was this great potential. And of course, I had met Monique in my work life, through my work life, and I got to know Mary Margaret, and so the opportunity to work with you two and with the urban ministry just was something I couldn't say no to.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. David?
So let me look, Karla, you know, I'm a Lakers fan, and
I know.
times are tough.
I know.
So I know you enjoyed that, right? It's all right. But I have to say, you know, before I say anything else, I want to say what a treat and a pleasure it is to be part of this conversation. As Monique mentioned, I'm retired. I try to limit my activities, but the idea of doing this event was just irresistible, and
Thank you,
it's something
David.
I believe in deeply. And again, I mean, I'll just say, I mean, I think for me, although we try to kind of think of the urban ministry's work as ecumenical, for me, it's a matter of faith that I participate in the urban ministry. I was raised as a Unitarian by a grandfather who was one of the first African Americans called to a white congregation, and I absorbed from him a great deal of my faith and my belief that it's critical to put one's faith in action.
Yeah.
And you know, at this point, I have to admit, I'm kind of lapsed, not a member of any congregation, and so for me, I'm able to live out my faith by working within this organization, which to my mind embodies, you know, the real spirit and meaning of faith, in fact, you know, and so it just so happens that a former colleague of mine from the Mass Humanity Board of the Mass Foundation for the Humanities, John Dacey, was a former member here, and he enticed me to joining. I had known about the work of the urban ministry, and I just find it as a place to live out my faith and give back.
Thanks. Thank you, David
Yeah.
and Karla.
Thank you to both of you.
And before we begin, I do want to let the folks who are gathered here know that there will be a time for Q&A a little bit later on. So if there are questions people have, they can think about them and know that they'll have an opportunity to ask those from through the chat or the Q&A function. So I want to just talk about this moment that we're in and what brings us to this conversation. As you know, the UU Urban Ministry, formerly known as the Benevolent Fraternity of Unitarian Churches, is, as you can hear by the name of it, a very old Boston nonprofit. We were founded about 190 years ago by the Reverend Joseph Tuckerman, a Unitarian minister who's considered a founder of modern day social work. And then in 1976, a little bit more recently, we inherited this campus that we're in Roxbury that includes the building known as First Church in Roxbury, our meeting house. We inherited from the congregation that had been here for hundreds of years and was folding. And during the course of our history, our 190-year history, we've done lots of different things. We could name many, many things we've done through history. So as we look at that backdrop of that deep history, I really want to know from both of you, how important is this moment for the urban ministry?
Go ahead, Karla. Karla, say something.
I think it's a super important time. I think that we are, in hopefully the tail end of a pandemic, but we really have confronted two pandemics, right? The pandemic of racism, and the pandemic of COVID, and we have to seize the moment. I just see no option for this country if we don't seize the moment. It's been laid bare. Racism's toll on all of us has been laid bare. And if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Right? If we don't step up at this time and name the issues, name our part in it. So certainly we've had some part in it as an organization, even over the 190 years, and develop a powerful partnership between suburbs and urban centers to change the course. We will have failed.
Thank you, Karla.
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Karla said. I mean, and it's interesting. I apologize because I'm going to take recourse to my background and my faith again and say, I believe, one of the things I observed from my grandfather, he said, David, you're responsible for the content of your own faith. And he said, he said, life is a gift and life is a mystery at the same time. And the lesson from that is to think about the urban ministry as at one time as always thinking of itself as a progressive organization. And that I think, although that we wrestled a lot with the history of this organization as we did this work, I think that impulse is critical to understand and recognize. And it was incumbent upon this organization to find a way to live into this moment. And I think it, and look, I think it began before the current crisis. We started to think about this and think about kind of how we would determine the content of our own activity in ways that were consistent with the world we saw around us. And I think, there was a little bit of discomfort, and if there wasn't mystery, there was a sense that there was something that we needed to do and change, and we weren't quite doing right. And it is, to my mind, a kind of a requirement to to confront one's discomfort and address it. Specifically, though, I think in this moment, I think I have this saying, that there's this notion of people being woke, and to me, there was a lot of them were sleepwalking, and I wanted us, and I think that we all collectively recognized that, and wanted to recognize the need to do the work that we've been doing. So I think my point is, though, I think although we might take issue and have grown from some of the language and ways in which the urban ministry operated, I think we are consistent with the urban ministry's mission, which is to be a force of progressivism and change and challenging inequity.
And building on what David has just said, I'm just reminded that one of our fellow board members has talked about the organization with progressive roots has a history of adapting. So it remains relevant 190 years later. There are lots of organizations that aren't, have not maintained their relevancy. So I do think that we also have a tradition of adaptation that we can draw on as well.
Thank you. Thank you both. Having been a longtime staff member here, it's been great to watch this process of a new mission unfold. And I know that it wasn't easy, and I appreciate all the work that was put in it. So if we can talk a little bit about what that journey was like to getting to this new mission. As you know, we started this conversation and a strategic planning process a few years before the COVID pandemic and shutdown, actually, and even the murder of George Floyd and so many others, named and unnamed. The pandemic and the murders of Mr. Floyd and the others shaped, deepened, and accelerated the process. And I know that those unfortunate events shaped many of us and changed our thinking and some behaviors. Can you and David both speak to how these unfortunate situations kind of shaped the process to our new direction?
So can I start, Karla? I want to kind of underscore something that Monique just said, which is that this process began several years ago. And I think it's really important to understand that we were as an organization, we're feeling a little bit uncomfortable. we were sitting, in that white church on the hill in Roxbury, and with Mary Margaret's and Karla's and the board's leadership, we recognized there was something incongruous there, and there was something problematic and challenging there, and I think so. And I'll just say that there was you don't just get here. There's a process of work, reflection, and understanding of oneself and one's place in society. And so there are things that we did, like try to recognize, first, what's the first thing that you do? You say, oh, well, we have to diversify, right? I mean, diversity and inclusion, right? Those are the bywords. Yeah, that was just diversify, which is like a corporate phrase as far as I'm concerned. But there was an idea, our board doesn't look like the community. And there was some idea of, we need to do some work on the board. And that was hard. It was difficult, to accomplish that. And that difficulty, I think, also forced some reflection on us. Well, who are we? I mean, who what are we trying? But we actually succeeded a bit. And I think that we brought in some new voices and new perspectives into our thinking about what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really critical for when we got to this moment, right? And I say that just because I think as one thinks about how to move an organization forward or how to do this work, it's not instantaneous. It takes a lot of very conscious and sometimes uncomfortable and failures,
Mhm.
you know? I'll let Karla speak, but I want to kind of anchor what we're talking about in this notion of doing the work across time, and everybody does strategic planning, but the work of transformation takes a great deal of reflection and introspection, as well as openness
Mhm.
to what's out there.
Yeah, yeah. Monique and Mary Margaret, do you remember when, I don't know the year, so I'm curious if you remember when you had painted on the entryway.
Lila Watson's, or the picture of
Yeah, the
Roxbury.
Lila Watson.
Lila Watson. That was
Yeah.
actually part of our, we had that committee task force engaging. So it's probably 4 years ago at this point,
Yeah.
I think.
4 or 5 years ago, yes.
Yeah.
I thought so. I was going to place it around then. I think that the painting of her very, well-known, quote about, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us walk together. That was a very clear statement that we aspired to something different. And so that, that was, so I think we've been in this kind of revisioning, remissioning, for quite a while. And I would suggest it actually began perhaps the first, it might have happened when the earlier board, actually before Mary Margaret got here, decided to work on securing the funds to fix up the church, and to not let this building be some kind of, symbol of disregard and disinvestment and disrepair.
Mhm.
And that it was the job of the congregations to step forward and make that possible. So I think if it start, I think, and David has been on the board, much longer than I have been. So I just sort of stand on the shoulders of others and just sort of been doing my part. But it felt to me when I arrived that there was movement, and it often took the form of what David described, discomfort.
Mm.
I knew something was going on, and I had to just work at resisting my temptation to fix things, right? And not that I knew how to fix things, but my instinct, my discomfort of not knowing the way, and to slow down and let us together begin to find the way, which is, I think, part of how I understand my UU faith as well. Is something about letting the process construct the answer, and that the process itself is partly the answer.
Yeah.
Some of it, Monique, let me just, can I do one other, so this is a complicated organization, right?
Yes.
And it's really important to understand that, and we typically think of having these 3 parts, 4 parts. In fact, there's the staff, UU staff, there's the board, there are the congregations, and there's the community, right? And, and the interesting thing is wrestling with how those 4 things interact and are tied together. And it raises all kinds of questions about stewardship. I think you're right, Karla. I think this whole question of restoring and maintaining the building had to do with taking on our responsibility to steward this organization. But in doing that, it opened us up to the contradictions,
yes,
that were present and that were eating at us, right? What does it mean to have stewardship of this building in this community if it is not of this community, right? And what does it mean? So, anyway, I just think that so there are these questions of stewardship. And I think that in this moment, we as all of us have to kind of rethink, whether it's the environment or whatever it is, kind of what stewardship itself means. And you don't do it in isolation, and you don't do it top down. So I'm sorry.
No problems you needed. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I want to just add to what you're saying, that for me in this organization, one of the things that I've experienced is the greater willingness, not only to be in discomfort, but to ask questions, like to raise the questions, right? And there have been, like, to make it all, like to put it all out there, right? Like, what does this organization mean, and what's complicated about it, and how doesn't it work? And I think for me, that sign has been very create a space for us to kind of get here, to just ask the questions.
Mary, can I just offer an example of a question that's causing discomfort? So at a recent board meeting, in one of the conversations we were having, at one of the small groups, someone asked, you know, we want this space to be the community space, yet we have this metal fence all around it, encircling John Elliott Square, and there's a board member saying, you know, can't we take that down? And we talked about, well, you know, it's a historical landmark, and what are the regulations, and then the sort of tension between renovation and restoration of a space, the historical accurate renovation, and community need. And then we talked a little bit about, at least can we put some signs on it that explain why there's a mess there? Yeah,
right.
But that kind of thing raises all these important questions that we then have to wrestle with, and it's often a set of some competing values.
And the one thing I would also add, and I want to acknowledge too, that, you know, not only was the board wrestling with the complications of the organization and the history behind it, staff also felt that. And that was a very challenging time for everybody. And, you know, the process is not over. We're all still trying to figure this out and find the right balance and do the right thing. And we make missteps along the way. But I will say that there is now a better process to creating space, to ask the questions, to push back, and to challenge. And as a staff of color here at this organization, I do feel like there are some listening ears to what's happening and what's going on and what the community is looking for and what they need. So as we continue to move through this conversation and, you know, kind of redesign what our work looks like in this community, I hope that that space is still available for community and staff members, because those voices are really important to this work. So thank you. Thank you both for your answers.
Thanks, Monique. I want to just kind of continue this talk about process and what got us here by naming that one item that came out of this process before we got to the mission and vision was in response specifically to the killing of George Floyd. And it was a statement that the board created to kind of, you know, put its values out there, and it's still on our website, and it's called We Speak Now. And I wanted to share it because it really, we still lift it up and hold ourselves accountable to what this said. So I wanted to share the We Speak Now statement, and I think we're going to share it on the screen, and folks also can go to our website, which is www.uuum.org. And so here it is. It's a little bit small, but let's see if we can make it a little bit bigger here. Any way to make it a little, our tech folks, I'm helping in the background. I'm kind of squinting my eyes a little bit. Okay, I see the mystery cursor going through, trying to find a way to.
If you go down to the bottom, I think, and put it in
the chat.
No, the bottom of your screen, see that little, there's a little, you see the little slider bar
presentation.
Right. Now go over right next to that. I think that might be full screen. There you go.
All right, there we go. This is the, what do they call that? You see the magic in the pudding or something? There's some saying. And we won't read the whole thing, but I do hope that people will go and look at this, because it does It does name our commitments and what we're committing to as an organization. And it, as you can see, folks can see that part of it is saying that through the Urban Ministry's 190-year history, we have predominantly been led by people who are white and our work framed by people with the privileges conferred by their whiteness. And we're naming some of these, the organization, the board, all the board members signed this. And it talks about being birthed in a nation and community built on racism and white supremacy. And the death of George Floyd tracks an unbroken line from slavery through lynching, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration. And if we scroll down, I don't know if we can scroll down a bit, you can read some of this analysis, but it makes these commitments. And so here are some of the commitments that we're going to continue to transform our historic Roxbury campus into a hub to serve the community of Roxbury. We're going to prioritize using our space to serve our programs and also groups working for racial justice. We're going to interrogate the racial history of our meeting house and investigate ways that First Church Roxbury and the Urban Ministry served and failed to serve people of color. We're going to deepen our investment in programming that addresses racial economic justice, and so on. So we named these pieces that really said it's not just, a statement that we feel badly about these things, but this is what we're going to do about it, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable. So I just wanted to kind of share this and to ask you, what are some key elements of the statement to you personally? What are the things that, I know the whole thing, when I read it, I feel it. But what are some of the key elements to you personally? What's hardest there from your point of view? And maybe also what inspires you? I know that's a lot to unpack, so take your time.
I think for me, one of the things that stands out and then saw its way into the mission and vision statement was the statement in there about we've not asked enough of congregations. That we've not asked enough of congregations. And we named in this statement race in a direct, race and racism in the most direct way I had heard this organization do. And I mean, I think that's what that moment was calling on people to do as well. And we did that, and it sort of broke some of our own organizational silence about it. We found other ways to talk about race, right? We talked about suburb and city, and we used code more often than not. This statement helped us break through that. And there's a direct line from this statement into our very direct focus on anti-racism work in our mission and vision.
Yeah, and and I'll say, I think the thing that strikes me, I went back and looked at it today as we got ready, and it's really important to to kind of emphasize the moment at which this happened.
Yep.
It really is. It was a moment of so-called awakening, right? And as I say, I do think that a lot of and I think the thing about this that to me is so powerful is when people start to reflect on how they have behaved, they will point to things they've done. They'll say, well, but I did this, well, but I said that, and I think the thing about this statement that's really important is the recognition that we have said things, we have done things, we have asked things, but not enough.
Right.
But not enough, right? So, and I think, there's this, it was this idea that, yeah, we do good stuff. Yeah, we're good people and all that, but not enough. And it's incumbent upon us to demand more and expect more of ourselves. And it's only by asking more of ourselves that we can contribute more. And I think that to me is its power. And again, I did, and the last line, to make this commitment to be the change we seek. right? Because it requires internal work as well. It's not, we aren't going to, and I think it was a step toward us getting out of this service mentality and this idea that sign and body that, it's not, we have no savior complex here, right? And so and the thing I'll finish with this. I mean, it's a living, vibrant document, right? That allows us to return to it, just to check in with it as we do our work.
True.
And I'll say this too. I mean, when I went back and reread it, and I was thinking to myself, oh my God, it's March 2022. I'm thinking it's March 2022. We have 9 months to welcome at least 5 new board members of color, right? And that's a very concrete, concrete commitment.
Yeah.
And it's out there for everyone to see. And I think that's the other thing that's actually often missing from the kinds of commitments people make, And we made that mistake also. Earlier it was, oh, well, we'll increase.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's,
Yeah.
And we built that into then our process in the board, our goals and Mary Margaret's goals. We really built, we've got the beginnings of an accountability structure where we have to confront what we promise and account for the progress or the lack of progress and make the mid-course corrections, not to the goals, right, but to our strategies for achieving them.
Great. Thank you both. David, you mentioned that we have to keep asking ourselves the questions, and how do we ask more of ourselves and do this work day after day? And as I look at this statement, I wonder what you two see in this statement that is, really tied to the work that we're planning to do and currently doing at Urban Ministry. And how does that connect to the accountability to the community? Because they're going to hold us accountable for doing everything that we say. And how do you see that connection relating to this statement and the work that we're doing?
well, I mean, again, you want to say something? Karla, you go on.
No, I was just going to say, Monique, can I fold it into the mission vision statement? Because this was like in some ways the first, it was like the predecessor of the vision mission statement. And I think the vision mission statement that we then developed after this was a product of some of the learning from doing this statement and then doing more of the work. I think has pushed us further than this statement in comprehending more about what partnership really has to look like. I mean, I'm not sure that the We Speak Now statement fully, and I'm not sure we fully get it yet, but I'm not sure that the We Speak Now statement fully, that we understood as much about what real partnership and allyship and accomplice work needs to look like. And I think we have a little better idea of that now than we did then. I don't think I think that's what we're really figuring out now. We don't have the answers, but I think that feels like what we're struggling with right now. I think in the staff work and the board work, what is that really look like?
I would echo that, Monique. I mean, I think that the mission work and that work was asking more of ourselves. That work was doing more of ourselves, right? And I think and again, I agree with you, Karla. I mean, I think that it's hard. It's the way to answer that is to kind of start to think about the mission statement and you know, and what it means and what we went through to get there. Because if you ask me, so to me, it has to do with understanding oneself in you know, and this word is in there, as a neighbor, right? And, you know, as opposed to an invader or whatever, you know,
Or a helper.
or a helper or any of that stuff. I mean, and we talked about this. What does it mean to be a neighbor? Right? There's a special, and you know, the kind of question about relationships, right? All the work that we did, and so Monique, I'm sorry. I mean, I think that's, I think it, you know, we have taken those questions and asked them of ourselves, and then done the work, you know, and so anyway, go ahead.
Thank you both, because I think you're right there. It's about the relationship, and it's about who we are and what we want to become as a neighbor in this community. Because have we always, and these are hard questions, have we always been a good neighbor? Have we been the kind of neighbor that this community needs? Have we been a neighbor that supports really and truly what is written above our doors, Education and Justice Center? Those are hard questions to answer.
Well, and Monique, again, I think, again, so for the people involved here, I mean, we did a lot of wordsmithing, right? I mean, we did a lot of work, and I went back and I was looking through my emails, I was looking at all the drafts, right? And I'm going to say, you know, one of the questions that we have to always ask is, what do you mean we, white man? When we at the Urban Ministry say we, it's a big and complicated we.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yep.
It's not just the staff and the community, the staff and the board and the delegates and the community, and they aren't all these unidirectional. It's not a whole bunch of arrows pointing only one way. Right? And to be able to weave a we out of those pieces takes a lot of work and commitment and dedication and openness, right? Yes. And not thinking that you have the final answer, right?
Yes.
Because for all of that weaving together, a thread can come up loose or whatever, and you have to find ways to keep that weave. And so that's a word. I think that's a word that whenever we use in any context the word we, it's incumbent upon us to think about and understand what that means, who that is, how we know who we are.
Yes.
And I think that's an example, David, you've articulated something in a way that I haven't heard us as a board or, you know, articulate it. And that's, I think, an example of how the vision mission work over this multi-year period is just forcing us to ask questions, to come up with new and different answers and evolving answers, and then we'll come up with better ones and new questions. And so it's really helpful for you to frame it that way. Thanks for asking the question, Monique. You pushed us.
That's
pushed
right.
us.
A little bit, a little.
A lot.
I actually want to springboard off of that, you know, that unpacking the we. And I want to show, I mean, we're talking a lot about our mission and vision. I actually want us to show our mission and vision statement, because not everybody necessarily knows it. I said it quickly at the beginning, but I'm hoping we can put on the screen our mission and vision statement. And Monique, would you read the mission and I'll read the vision, and then we're going to ask Karla and David to unpack it some.
Sure, yes. Our mission: to work across race and place to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture, and to advance racial, social, and economic justice.
In our vision, we envision a greater Boston where all people live with freedom and dignity and have equitable access to resources and opportunity to shape the present and the future. I'm still very proud of and I hope we all feel proud of what we put together. And, to get back to the point, Dave, that you're making about there was every single word and comma even was a source of discussion by the board.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we could break it down, if you would talk a little bit about breaking it down. And you can talk about any elements that you want, but I wonder if you could talk about, like, break down, what are we talking about when we say across race and place? What do we mean when we talk about Greater Boston? Why those words?
Maybe Vinny could put it in the actual language of in the chat so that
Good
people
idea.
can sort of see it
People
as
could
we're
refer to it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
as we're talking about it.
Thanks for that.
So while it's going up there, I thought naming Greater Boston was super important. Which was a way to say we are in this together. And using David's lovely language there of we, right? It's a step in knitting together the four parts of the organization. It's the name Greater Boston. So it felt like an important step in the direction that we need to be going.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think there's so many words in there that we really wrestled with. It's hard to, but I think, and I'll say, I think it's important to recognize, one of the things that we wrestled with was this kind of idea of culture and justice, and this question of, white supremacy and racism, and what the relationships are, and to actually understand the word to address both the culture and the inequities, right? And the idea of working across race, age, and culture. And you all remember what we went through to get to this. Is unbelievable. It's giving me a headache just just going back to think about it. But it's important to think about this across, the word across itself. I mean, it's that connecting word in there that's a kind of throwaway word, but it's very meaningful and important because it has to do with the way how we constitute the we, right? And again, I'm gonna have to give a shout to our colleague, to Derek about being able to think about, because again, he's the one who helped us think about the direction of these arrows, right? And what it means to do this work across, and it's not just suburban, urban, right? It's suburban, right? It's work that has to kind of in a way, not transcend, but recognize and then work with these different geographies, right? So, and then the other word that I would say, I would share about the work we did was on catalyst, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of work, and this kind of idea about leading. Were we going to lead, to the promised land, or were we going to, how do we work? And we didn't want to run away from the notion of having an impact, right? And there's this idea, so the idea was to be a catalyst, to be something that could actually make things happen, or pave the way for things to happen, and not to shy away from the notion that we can do things, but critically that we do them in relationships, right? And it's not. So I mean, I don't know, Mary Margaret. I mean, we could do this on every word in here.
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, I think people at least get a little flavor of, just all the thought that went into and trying to convey this back and forth, right? That it's not about white suburban people coming to Roxbury, right? It's not about that to do something. It's bigger than that. and it's broader than that, and it's, and that's necessary, right? That different framework.
And it's not about Metco either. I'm sorry, Karla. It's not about taking people from Boston into the suburbs, right? And part of this question about dismantling culture is that it points to work that needs to be done in the congregations,
right,
among themselves as well, right? In terms of kind of how you dismantle this culture and how and whose responsibility is it to dismantle the culture of white supremacy? That's not the responsibility necessarily of the residents of Roxbury, right?
Right.
And
David, and I know you remember this moment well, in leading up to the even the first draft of our, we got the help of a third party to do focus group interviews of staff members, focus groups of community members, of sampling of delegates, and so we had a lot of data to work from, and the data was prepared for us in a way that was quite stark, because it was direct quotes from people, not for attribution, right? But so that we could get the sort of the flavor of some of the intensity of feeling. And there was one quote. Why don't you share it, David?
There are two, actually. I went back and I did some work. I have, I'm retired, so I have this time. But there were two. It's interesting. And I think we focused on one. I'll read the first one we didn't focus on so much. And then, since we're being particularly candid here, I will say some engagements have had this sense from the suburban congregants being, a sense of benevolence toward the poor folks of Roxbury, right? That was a comment made by a community member. And that one's one, we're familiar with, pretty, that problem. But then it's this one that really struck all of us on the board. All you organizations in Boston, sorry. Oh, no. Now, if those people spent a week with people in the community, for example, and now you say, could give them a gift card instead of a toy train. So this was a staff member who was reflecting on the insistence of giving a toy train for a Christmas gift, because that would make the giver feel better, right? As opposed to being attentive to, understanding, and responsive to the needs and desires of the recipient. And so that one, you remember this too, Monique, that one shook us, and again, to Karla's point, there was this whole process, all these things were on this PowerPoints and all this, and we were in these focus groups and stuff. And that one came out in a way of almost all the focus groups as the most telling, piece of data, right?
It made us the most uncomfortable, I think. Or speaking for myself,
It
made me the
revealed
most uncomfortable and revealed the most. Spoke to the sort of core of the issue, right, that we must attend to if we're going to be a part of the solution as opposed to a part of the problem.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna give you a moment to take a deep breath. And thank you for thus far, such a rich and great conversation and candid. Really, really appreciate and value that. And we're going to take a break to hear from our from Fresh Food Generation, a commercial with Fresh Food Generation. Please write down their name here, and we're going to have a chance to come back and give and offer a few questions for folks in the audience who are gathered here to have some questions of Karla and David. We'll welcome them, but first we're going to hear from our Fresh Food Generation friends, an amazing eatery that we hope that you will support. So here you go.
Hello, my name is Cassandra Campbell. I am the co-founder of Fresh Food Generation. We are a farm-to-plate food truck, catering business, and restaurant. The majority of folks who work with us live within walking distance of the neighborhood, and we think it's really important to grow within. We opened up about 8 years ago with a food truck in the Dudley Square neighborhood. It really started with a mission of increasing access to healthy, affordable, cooked foods in my own neighborhood. I was born and raised in Roxbury, and I wanted to see healthier options that were delicious and good for you. Please stop by the restaurant. We have outdoor seating, and we have a team that loves to put love into the food.
Awesome. All right, so this is an opportunity. We have a few moments. If there are, I know there's a lot to percolate on, but if there are some reflections, responses, questions, you can put that in the Q&A or at the Q&A function, or you can put it into the chat. So we're going to just open it up for a moment. Go ahead, Monique.
Oh, no, that's fine. We have a couple of comments in the chat, so I'm happy to read those.
Great, thank you.
This comes from Joanne. I applaud everyone for the deep thinking and time in recreating each word and phrase and punctuation in the new mission and vision for today and into the future. And let's see, Tempe, my friend Tempe, hi. Let's see, when I first engaged with the UUM more than 10 years ago, some of the language seemed aimed more at me as a white person. For example, building bridges, which I found inspiring and keyed to my personal aspirations. And my interpretation also had an implication of forgiveness. The new mission statement, by removing the explicit appeal to white people, feels even more inspiring, that it asks me to grow up a bit, not need to center my white self, and to take in phrases like white supremacy culture. But at first I didn't like it. As in, I didn't like the work I had to do to understand my reaction to the new mission.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's
Thank
really,
you, Tempe. That's,
yeah.
I appreciate the candor and the humility behind that statement. I think we aspire to the same as individuals and as organizations. So thank you for modeling that, Tempe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, look at that question look at that question.
It's a
in the
great
Q&A.
question. Yeah, I'm eager to ask this. It's a great question, very on point. From somebody who asks, so what does the new mission statement mean for the programs at the Urban Ministry? That's very on point. Great question.
Yes. That is a great question. Mary Margaret and Monique can participate.
I was like, I'm sorry, the executive director is not here to help answer. No free passes here. Come on.
Oh, I'm just doing comments on this side.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just share that there's a, that in some ways, I mean, you've heard folks talk about like the journey to get to this new mission vision. It's like, whoo, we got there. No, like that is just the beginning. And, there is work underway and will be underway to both, everything from, kind of, saying how can this program focus more explicitly on Roxbury and connecting with Roxbury, all the way to what new do we need to do that we haven't been doing? Like what's and I think foundational to that is asking the community, how do we create, a community voice that is ongoing in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And, I'll just say one more thing and then go back to my role as moderator. We're going to be convening a community engagement task force in late May or early June, where we're going to be inviting people from the neighborhood to help us think about how do we build those systems for shaping our work and make sure that there are stakeholders from the community that are weighing in, because many of the folks here tonight are delegates, right, from our member congregations. Like there's always this shaping that's happening, and this built-in voice, which we love and we value, but we're really going to do what we say we're going to do. We need to also build and ensure that we have that same ongoing voice and shaping from this community of Roxbury, from our neighbors. And so I'd say some stuff will happen soon, and we'll see more, some different things, but we're talking about a deep foundational change in response to this mission, and it's going to take time.
Mm-hmm. And
Mayor,
Monique,
I would just add to what Mary Margaret was saying is that, yes, it's going to take time. There are baby steps to getting this work done. It takes many years to do this work in a very intentional and sustainable way. So we don't want this to just feel like it is a box that we have checked and now we've done great work and we've made all the white people feel comfortable coming in, and we've made all the people of color in the community feel good about what we're doing. It's not that easy of a process. But as I think about our programs and watching how they have changed and shifted over the years, it's really an opportunity for us to look at what we're doing in our programs, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. Is it working? Is it culturally responsive? Even looking at some of the language that we are using in our programming and making sure that it is language that is culturally responsive and uplifting to the communities that we are partnering with, not serving, but partnering with. And making sure that what we are doing in our programs is inclusive of the needs and the voices of the folks that we want to partner with. So, Karla, you were going to say something.
No, thank you for that. Because that partnering piece is really important. I think I want to say just two things about impact on programming. One is that the community, what in our budget line item, I think was once called community ministry, may even still be called that, but it's the community engagement part of the work. That's become more and more part of the work we do over the last 5-6 years. I anticipate that growing because it is so central to this mission. I think so central to the mission. And since we're a small organization, we can't do everything one could do under this mission. We'll have to make some choices. If we're going to expand the programming under community engagement, we're going to have to figure out how we devote something less to some other programming. So that's going to be down the road. We're going to have to figure out what are the smartest ways to do that. And the smartest ways to do that are certainly going to involve community voice is going to be super important in that, and figuring out what are our unique assets. What is unique about the urban ministry, and what is unique about the space we occupy, the location we have, our 4-part organization that David described, that's complex and challenging, but it's also an asset. So how do we use our special assets to carve out our niche of work in this big challenge, so that when we're all done and finished, we can say we did an important part of this big work. Yeah.
So
I do see one more question.
Could I just pick one more comment here? I think there's a very concrete way, although I'm no longer on the board, it is my understanding that the board is engaged in and will continue to be engaged in a process that looks at the alignment of the programs to that's a very important practice and mechanism. And I think, and a lot of thought went into this, because I think the question was, are we going to scrap programs, and maybe so, but the question is to think about how they're in alignment. If they aren't in alignment, is there a way for them to be in alignment? Is there a way that the community can take? And I have to give the Jericho Road example. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's one of the other things that there was a project that we had going that was really a great project. It was designed to actually kind of make available to organizations in the community, kind of expertise of people from the congregations, right? Kind of technical, lots of resources from the congregations could be applied and used by, and through a series of things internal to the urban ministry, we had to end the project, right? And it was unilateral. Right? And we just ended it. And, we have since learned and come to understand that it had huge consequences, and that we weren't, it was a sign of not only we were not aligned, we weren't a good partner, right? And so I think, anyway, I think there's a way in which having that metric guiding us about alignment is one critical way going forward.
Thank you. I will also say, just before we wrap up, as I listened to—
There's one more question in the Q&A, Monique.
Okay, sure. And as I listened to Karla and David, and you're talking about our assets and alignment, I don't want to forget about the people within our programs who make this happen, and that's our staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The urban ministry staff is great and amazing, and they are committed to the work that they are doing. And it is not easy work, it's hard work. And we can't do this without being a collective group of folks who want to work together and learn and grow and support each other and align what we are doing with our teams, so that we can do the best work outside of this organization. So there was also a comment from one of our neighbors. Thanks for this fascinating conversation. I'm a neighbor and I thank you for all you do. And that's from Jerry Hines. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Margaret, you said there was one more question.
One more from Marcia, who said she has a follow-up question about programs. She saw something, I guess, on Facebook, a quote from Desmond Tutu: "There comes a time when we need to stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in." I've thought about this a lot. Do you think this applies to our new mission?
It's a great quote.
What do you think? Does that apply to our new mission?
Well, so Marcia, thank you as always, and it's good to have you here. Marcia is a critical part of how we got to where we are. And
right.
we all deeply appreciate her. So this is effectively a statement of public health, right? This defines a social determinants of health framework for social change, right? That we're used to and accustomed to dealing with all the downstream effects of things that happen upstream. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, I hope so, because, our understanding has to do with getting at root causes and not symptoms. And I think, Monique and the folks, and I think as the urban ministry thinks about its assets and what it can do that's unique, I think one of the things to think about is the way in which the urban ministry can use its resources and access to affect upstream events, right? Yeah. And and whether or not there are other organizations and groups that are dealing with a lot of the downstream issues, really very effectively. So Marcia, I think that's right. I think we do need to think about whether and how our resources, influence and what have you, can in fact affect things upstream.
Thank you.
I think an example that may be emerging of one of the action steps for alignment is creating a congregational engagement task force, and it's being co-chaired by a member of our board, Reverend Catherine Cullen, who's a longtime minister in Duxbury. And so Mary Margaret and Catherine are steering that work. And one of the steps they've already taken is looking at potential partner organizations, in this case, the UU Mass Action, which focuses on legislative advocacy, which is upstream issues. And so they're exploring with UU Mass Action of how we could leverage their influence, how we can connect UU Mass Action more to the congregations, and how we can support that work, so that we may not get into the legislative advocacy role ourselves. That may not be something that we're particularly positioned at, but we can work through another organization that is set up to do that and can focus on it. And so we're trying to figure out what kind of partnership that could look like that would align with our mission.
Thank you.
Yes. And one last comment from Alice. Relationships and partnerships are key for connections. I want to be known and to those, I want to be known and to those who are different from myself. Only can do this in community. I like the mission and vision because it seems possible to work on this together. That leads me to my final question, which is, how can folks who are listening tonight help the urban ministry in the work that we are trying to do? And how can they go out and share what it is that we are doing here at the urban ministry to gather more support for what we do? And perhaps we need to include Mary Margaret in that. So that's for Mary Margaret, Karla, and Dave.
And you.
And Monique.
How do they help?
And you.
Come on, girl.
And
Taking out, I read the question, I'm out of this one.
No.
I'll start by saying this. If you are interested in coming to do the work with us, understand that it is going to be a process not only for you as an individual. There's some unpacking that you will need to do, and we can help you to do that. And we can talk through what our programs are doing and what it feels like to be a participant here, and how you can add to that process and to that feeling of us supporting and partnering with every person in our program. And one other thought, again, our team members are here. We have a level of expertise and experience, both from our professional lens as well as our lived experience. Rely on us to share that and respect us enough to know our position and our expertise and knowledge, and use that information from the employees, the team members, to grow in your efforts as volunteers, stakeholders, donors. It's all important, but we can't do it without all of you.
I would say my thought is to that question is, for those, and most of those who have been on this night are delegates, volunteers, members, from congregations, to be open and persistent, to really keep showing up and know that it's a long process. And for those who are neighbors, speak up. We want to hear and from you, and we want you to help us shape this organization, or whoever's us is. Back to David's question, we want you to be part of shaping this.
I'm still taken by David's discussion about we earlier.
Yep.
And very taken by that, and I'm focused on everybody trying to make a bigger we, and doing their part. And one of the ways that I think people can both find a way in and push those already in, is by asking hard questions and not being afraid that you'll make us, uncomfortable. It's good if we're uncomfortable. If we weren't uncomfortable, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are. So I'm assuming we're going to continue to have to be uncomfortable at times to get where we want to get to.
So I'm gonna have to admit, Monique, I don't know the answer, right? I'm not sure, but I have a thought. And it is that this organization is known as the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. It's a ministry. And for me, one of the things that means is our work is a ministry. Our work is designed to, in my words, make all of us whole, right? And to me, that's the meaning of justice, to be made whole. And it means that we find ways to carry, I mean, look, it could well be that what happened here tonight was part of the UU's ministry. And people who are here, who carry this on with them and go into their work, can themselves become involved and engaged in what we do, but you can also start to work on those upstream issues. You can, kind of become, kind of model this work in your everyday life, right? So, look, and I said to in a pre-thing, I attended a funeral today for a colleague of mine who was just a remarkable woman whose influence, Michelle Waters Canham, who did remarkable work as an individual. And what strikes me is the power of this organization to expand on the kind of work that she did. I mean, at her funeral, people talked about the impact she had, and the idea of expanding that impact organizationally. Think about the uniqueness of this thing. So I'm sorry, I'm starting to preach, and I don't know.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. It's a perfect,
Thank you.
It's a perfect note to close this out. So thank you. I have loved and valued this discussion. I am so grateful, Karla and David, for you joining Monique and myself here this evening. It's been wonderful. I'm so grateful for those who signed in and listened, and therefore were part of this evening with us. There's a lot of work ahead, but it's moments like this that for me, lift me up and keep me wanting to keep moving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And next month, our last community conversation of the season, and it's a youth takeover. Monique and I are going to be here for a minute, but then the young people are going to push us out, and the young people in our after school program are going to lead the next community conversation. So that is a must see. So hope you'll be here in April to see that. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks,
Karla and David.
Have
All
a
right.
good
Take
evening.
care. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
friends.